Good afternoon. At the moment we're sitting in the driest period in history from May until September, and that is since these measurements first started getting taken way back in 1880. And if you speak to people who understand the environment, there are certain signs that the environment is starting to give us that we might be heading towards a critical water shortage. There's certain species of plant, for example, that are starting to shed a lot of leaves. There's discoloration of certain plants, which is unusual at this time of year as they start to battle the situation with water. To find out more about the reasons for this and what sort of situation we really are in at the moment, I caught up with Mark Dixon.
Well, Jeff, the records show that since 1880, from May till now, has been the driest period. So it is a bit of a concern. You can see how low this level of the river is here. Where I'm sitting is usually where the water level is, and these stepping stones are out of the water. There's a number of things. So if we look at it overall, in the bigger picture, the ENSO outlook is ENSO neutral, and ENSO is the El Nino scale of, are we in El Nino, are we in a neutral phase between El Nino, or are we in La Niña? So El Nino is usually drier, La Niña is usually wet. So we're in a neutral phase at the moment, and so if that continues, then we can see an extension of this dry period. And so if you are looking at domestic consumption of water, it is something to be a little bit worried about, because if we don't get enough rain to resupply all our storage in the garden route, then it compromises a lot of domestic consumption. And obviously you've got the big challenge of competing with agricultural requirements, especially as we're going into summer. So that's the overall picture. If we look at the forecast now, we've got roughly 30 millimeters of rain forecast this coming weekend. But yeah, it's one of those things, and there's the bigger picture of ENSO has an impact. But then we start looking at our other threats to water security in the area, and that's obviously our alien vegetation, and they all transpire at a higher rate. Just as we walked here on the path, you would have noticed all the leaves on the path, and those are trees shedding their leaves in response to this dry phase. So they are wanting to reduce their surface area for transpiration, which is the loss of moisture in the natural process of them pumping water up to the canopy. And by reducing that, their leaf surface area, by dropping their leaves, they are in a way trying to minimize the amount of water that they require for their normal functions. When we start looking at our alien vegetation, which there's absolute swathes of, we've got massive surface areas in this. So some of the studies have shown that in patches it can be up to 30% cover in certain areas, and especially in our catchment area. So should we be worried? You definitely, there has to be some concern. If we don't get rain coming, then it's going to be a dry summer. The forecast is a very weak La Niña kicking in midsummer into 20, but not lasting for long. But it's one of these vagaries with climate change. We don't know that the predictability nowadays is just so compromised.
And we're also seeing, you pointed out, we're starting to see signs in the natural vegetation of a drought. You were pointing out the discoloration of some of the vegetation at the map of Africa, for example, where on the face of it, it looks beautiful, looks green.
Yeah.
But a trained eye will notice.
So I've always said, when we're in a drought phase, this is the greenest drought you're ever going to see, because our trees are evergreen, most of them. We've got very few that are deciduous species. So the deciduous ones have and they're partially deciduous. They've dropped their leaves and they're now re-sprouting new leaves. But there's other species. So the one tree that we looked at just now was the white ironwood. They drop in their leaves prolifically in a number of places. The cercias, some of the cercia species, they drop in their leaves as well. And so as you look up the slope, you can see patches of, sort of autumn color vegetation. And those species don't generally have, the ones that are doing that now don't have autumn fall. And we're starting to see more and more of that. You just see the leaf litter on the path here, and that's just the all the species preparing for a dry phase. If we get rain, they'll respond very well. If we have a look here, if you go into the peri-urban and the rural areas in the district here, a lot of people, their storage facilities have dried up. So, that's for domestic consumption. So in the region that I live, in Rondaflay, there's a lot of people having to go and buy water and get it delivered just to replenish their rain tanks. So that's the first threat when it starts happening domestically in the urban centres.
And just lastly, animal behaviour and movement of species of animals into an urban area to look for water?
Well, we're definitely seeing that. We've seen Plett's just published, for the first time they've had bush pigs moving into the area. One of my neighbours thought he had a caracal or wild cat, and then when he went out and shone a torch, it was the bush pigs that were just coming in. So they are leaving their natural habitats and they're coming to urban areas to just try and get some moisture and some food, because obviously people are watering gardens and that, so there's something that's still got nutrient for them.